126 years ago this past week, the city of Butte was rocked by a massive explosion that killed 58 people. On January 15th of 1895, the Kenyon-Connell Warehouse fire devastated families and broke the city's heart. Today, a monument is being built to honor the men who died in that tragedy. Kevin Mackey has our Montana moment.
We are at ground zero of the Butte warehouse explosion site.
Not only are we at ground zero, this is where the students from the high school wrote "No Memory" on a pole where the site was 126 years ago.
A high school kid's spray-painted message spurred efforts to unveil a story that had been largely forgotten.
You could say this is comparable to 9/11 for that time frame. For sure, people went down to help and they never came home.
Picture this 126 years ago at 9:55 in the evening. It's cold, snowy, it's winter in Butte.
Here in the warehouse district, a stove in the Kenyon-Connell Warehouse overheats and starts a fire.
The fire transgressed across the building.
Down the block at the corner of Utah and Iron stood call box 72.
And this is where Officer Steinborn sounded the alarm.
The firemen responded. They hooked up a hose to the hydrant over a block away, ran the hoses and the horses over this way, and set up a command post about 60 feet away from here.
When people heard there was a fire, they of course came running, whether it was to watch, and then it was eventually to help.
But it was more than a fire. Stored in the Kenyon-Connell was illegally stored dynamite. Piled next to it were railroad fish plates and steel rabble heads used for mining work.
Once that dynamite ignited, all of these little small pieces of steel became giant bullets that flew this whole area around here. And some of the first people to get attacked by those bullets were the firemen that responded to the fire.
Next door at the Butte Hardware Warehouse, there was even more illegal dynamite.
The second building caught on fire, and it exploded with more dynamite than the first building.
Altogether, there were tons of dynamite that should have been stored at locations much farther south of town. 13 of Butte's 15 firemen, including their chief and most of the department's horses used to pull the fire wagons, perished.
They landed in people's houses. It hit one man in the head, and he ultimately died in March from his injury. One woman, her 2 sons went down, and then her husband went down, and none of them survived.
We may never know the identities of all the people who died here. The district was home to transients. People would come and go, many without families.
We were starting to hit the peak of Butte's melting pot. You know, people were immigrating here from all over the world.
This is the Old Sisters Hospital, the largest hospital in Butte at the time. In January 1895, it was filled with injured and dying.
The major hospitals were overrun with the injuries, but a lot of them that were injured were taken to houses that were nearby.
The morgues were filled. All of Butte was in mourning. Lindsay Mulcahy and Jim McCarthy are with the nonprofit Butte's Historical Memorials. They helped spearhead this still incomplete tribute to the warehouse fire at the Butte Silver Bow Fire Station.
I think it's an important touchstone event for the fire department, and it's something that's played a critical role in the formation of the department and stretches through to today.
When we come back, bigger-than-life heroes in the rubble of the warehouse fire of 1895.
NBC Montana is
Honoring the men and animals who died in the warehouse fire is almost finished. It's a collaborative effort between 2 extraordinary Montana artists. Kevin Mackey continues our Montana moment.
Firefighters already have a memorial to the firemen who died in the explosion. The warehouse memorial will be more encompassing. It commissioned Butte artist Martha Cooney Simonich to draw the scene.
Yeah, it's a moment in time that we need to preserve and treasure.
In a field of rubble, she drew Butte. 60-year-old E.W. Two Bear Robbins, a math professor who helped fight the fire. 12-year-old Gibbon Fraser, Fire Chief Angus Cameron, plus Jim the horse and firefighter William Copeland's loyal Newfoundland dog.
It's kind of what Butte, Montana is. We, way back even then, you know, we do what we can do, and even down to the dog, everybody was there helping each other.
You got that one shutter click, the second after the explosion. What were they doing?
Butte Historical Memorials commissioned Belgrade sculptor Jim Dolan to bring Martha's scene to another level.
That's all the work on the head. Basically transformed the 2-dimensional drawings into 3-dimensional sculpture that would be emotional for the people who saw this.
Most of the sculptures are on display at Gamers Cafe uptown. Fire Chief Angus Cameron was identified by the Butte Fire Department insignia on his belt buckle.
He was buried with his boys, as he called them, and they were other members of the fire department.
The chief is a towering, noble figure.
You see these people as bigger than life, and I wanted to show that they are.
He was the leader of those men. So yeah, he was definitely a hero.
So is Two Bear Robbins, the 60-year-old civilian.
He was a hero. He went in and tried to help.
Two Bear is sitting down with his coat off and his hat by his side.
It's like he's hauled hoses back and forth, and he's exhausted.
Gibbon Fraser was a couple blocks away when he was injured and later died. At 12, he was the youngest victim. A poignant story of the innocence of childhood. Jim the horse has already been installed at the Butte Silver Bow Fire Station. The sculptor portrays Jim as in shock with an injury to his back leg. Another horse next to Jim took the brunt of the explosion.
When it blew up, it killed his partner, and this horse, named Jim, survived for a long time afterwards.
In his hands, the fire chief holds Jim's halter. We don't know the dog's name, but Martha likes to call him Jack. He was the pet of firefighter William Copeland.
He survived, and they were taking his casket. There were rows and rows and rows of caskets going out to the cemetery, the people that had died. And the dog followed right along with his master the whole way.
This is William Copeland's gravesite. It's here that his dog came to lay with his head on the firefighter's flowers. He'd stay here without water or food until days later the dog would die of a broken heart. Jim Dolan's still working on the dog and boy sculptures. The memorial should be ready this summer.
It's almost like these people have been waiting for 100 years to be recognized.
And it's been a lost and forgotten history that is now finally going to be coming to life here in Butte.
So now the memory is being brought alive.
In the spirit of heroes from that cold, fateful January night so long ago. Kevin Mackey, NBC, Montana.